Thank you for watching another video by Empower PT. Today I'm going to answer probably the most pertinent question in boxing today. It's a question that's been asked of me by pretty much everybody that I'm involved in, particularly the boxers who I coach. The question is, and they literally word it, coach, who will win out of Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua? And me being the kind of person that I am, there's no way I could give them a straight answer. I had to bring together some analysis, maybe a graph or two, a bit of elaboration so I can explain my answer. So to start, there seems to be an opinion running through, from what I see, most of the boxing world, that Tyson Fury is a runaway winner of this bout. A large part of that opinion is based upon the fact that Anthony Joshua is not the most fluid fighter in the world. In fact, they tend to think that he's a bit stiff and robotic. In fact, there's been many comparisons between Anthony Joshua and another British fighter from the 1980s and 90s, Frank Bruno. Now, I can see why some of these people say this, because Anthony Joshua started boxing at a relatively late age. I think he was 18. And as a coach myself, that is quite late to teach someone to box. And you tend to find that anyone, I'm going to say later than the age of 14 who learns to box, lacks that natural fluidity. It's very difficult to teach it. And what do we mean by fluidity? It's that ability to throw punches in a relaxed state, being able to flow into each punch, as opposed to being very stiff and wooden and upright. So, building upon that analogy of Frank Bruno, because those critics of Bruno always say that he was a bit stiff and robotic, I'm going to show you a video of Frank Bruno here. He's stopping the journeyman Jesse Ferguson. You'll see that it's clubbing power shots to the head that are finishing the job, not him resetting his feet and throwing fluid punches. Bruno's a big, powerful man. He's relying on power here and brute force. A better example of resetting your feet and throwing fluid punches is Evander Holyfield's finish of Mike Tyson in their first bout. Holyfield is a lighter man than Frank Bruno, so therefore he has more fluidity, but there is a trade-off in terms of he lacks that bulk power that Frank Bruno has. Bruno does show susceptibility to short fighters with fast hands, namely Mike Tyson. And Anthony Joshua had similar problems with Andy Ruiz in their first fight. In fact, if we look at this graph, you'll see that with the big heavyweights, there's generally a trade-off between power and fluidity. The more power you have, generally the less fluid you are, or the more fluid you are, the less powerful you are. And when I talk about power here, I'm not talking about explosive Deontay Wilder type power. I'm talking about the heavy-handed clubbing power. For example, Frank Bruno, strong, powerful, heavy punches, but not very fluid. In comparison, Anthony Joshua is a bigger, more powerful version of Bruno. However, even his detractors must say he is a little bit more fluid than Bruno, hence being higher on the fluidity axis. A more recent comparison to Anthony Joshua would be Vladimir Klitschko, who is an equivalently big man to Joshua, but considered to be a lot more fluid. Even in his fight with Anthony Joshua, you'll see he has a certain bounce in his step, but he's probably a little less powerful. An old school comparison would be Muhammad Ali. Watch as he gracefully slips either side of Sonny Liston's ramrod jab. Ali was the epitome of fluidity. However, this was at the expense of power. The aforementioned Holyfield was slightly less fluid than Ali. Being of similar weight and stature to Ali, he also lacked that heavy-handed power. In fact, that heavy-handed power is generally a gift only reserved for the true super heavyweights, those men who are 6'5" or 240 pounds plus. That said, if we look at the graph and draw a line between Vladimir Klitschko and Ali, I feel that Tyson Fury sits perfectly in the middle. Tyson Fury is a very big man, but he is very loose. Similar to Ali's coronation against Sonny Liston, Fury won his title from Vladimir Klitschko, slipping either side of Vladimir's pulverizing jab, countering with accurate sharp blows, but not clubbing shots. Staying with Tyson Fury for one moment, even though his 7th round knockout of Deontay Wilder is probably the most impressive win by either of the two men, I don't believe that Tyson Fury won that fight by punch power. I believe he won that fight by not allowing Wilder to set himself to throw his power punches, and by manhandling Wilder all over the ring until Wilder got exhausted. Obviously, there was some punching in there too, but I believe up until that night, Wilder was allowed to get away with bombing his right hand from distance, and Fury was the first person to test to see if Wilder had a plan B. In a similar situation, though not as high profile, I recall Lennox Lewis roughhousing the then WBO champion Henry Akinwande into exhaustion. Until then, Akinwande was able to use his reach and his height to have his way with lesser fighters. If we go back to our graph, and some may disagree with my next assertion, if we continue the Ali, Fury, Klitschko line towards more power, then we draw a line from Anthony Joshua, but increasing his fluidity. That intersection produces Lennox Lewis, who I believe is the apex of the 240 to 250 pound, 6'5" super heavyweight. If you watch Lennox, he's loose, but he also carries that manhandling, clubbing power, but he combines it with accuracy. In fact, if you look at this particular combination, watch the fluidity and the accuracy to which he knocks out Francois Botha here. This is 4 punches in combination, all of them on target, thrown very fast. Not many big men can do this. This is not to say that Lennox Lewis didn't have his faults, a lack of concentration being one of them. See here against Frank Bruno, once again, a similar styled fighter to Joshua, where he drops his hands and gets caught. Tyson Fury has seemed more serious, incorporating weight training into his regime, which in my opinion has actually added to his heavy-handedness. Thus, if we look at the graph again, I feel he moves further up the power line towards Lennox Lewis, hopefully without losing too much fluidity. When it comes to training, I don't think there's anyone as focused as Anthony Joshua, and I believe his training has finally overcome the late start he had in the sport. In his last 2 fights, I feel that Anthony Joshua was more fluid than he's ever been, thus moving in further across the fluidity axis, again nearer to the Lennox Lewis apex. His dismantling of Kubrat Pulev had echoes of Lennox Lewis, and I believe this is Joshua's best ever performance. So I believe, as in the aforementioned Lewis-Bruno clash, Joshua should take something from Bruno's book in terms of coming forward behind the jab, banging Fury's arms, body, wherever he can hit, coming forward at all times, being brutal. I think if he takes a backward step, that's suicide. He allows Fury to use his reach, and that's a no-no. And yes, I am aware of the outcome of the bout between Lennox Lewis and Frank Bruno, where Bruno, when fatigued, walked into a monster left hook from Lennox Lewis. However, for me, Fury is not the same one-punch power fighter that Lennox Lewis is, and Joshua doesn't fade down the stretch like Frank Bruno. So I think he should take a leaf from that book. So my prediction is for Fury to win an unpopular decision. And when I say unpopular, I don't mean unpopular in that he doesn't win it, but I mean unpopular in that the style of the victory is unsatisfying. I think he will slip off to the side, throwing jabs off to the side of Joshua's jab, slipping off, throwing right hands over Joshua's jab, clinching Joshua and spoiling him and slipping either side of the jab, making it very awkward for Joshua to land. Very similar to his performance against Vladimir Klitschko. In fact, in terms of being unsatisfying, I think something like the Floyd Mayweather-Manny Pacquiao fight, where Floyd definitely won the fight, but he neutralised Manny's aggression. It wasn't a super exciting fight. If it was a super exciting fight, that means that Manny Pacquiao would have been getting through with punches. But it was not the most exciting fight. I believe Fury will use something very similar. Now, I don't say my prediction with absolute certainty. I can see scenarios where Anthony Joshua does manage to catch up with Fury, and Anthony Joshua is a big, powerful man. I know Fury can take a good punch, but Joshua can really punch. So I can see scenarios where maybe Joshua catches Fury and takes him out, or at least drops him. I can also see scenarios where Fury jumps out with quick combinations to hit Joshua while Joshua's in his static pose. You know, we've seen before that Andy Ruiz can throw quick combinations at Joshua. Fury is capable of throwing fast combinations too. And I can imagine very similar to this particular combination by Lennox Lewis against the same Frank Bruno. I can see Fury throwing something like that. He's not as big a puncher as Lennox Lewis. I don't really see it coming quite the same. So I have been asked to pick, and I believe Tyson Fury, by neutralising Joshua's power, wins the fight in a fight that doesn't really quite live up to the hype, unfortunately. Thank you for watching my channel. Please like, please share, please comment. You know, if you disagree with everything I said, by all means, say it. Thank you very much. This is Empower PT.